Hey, this is Jimmy B with a quick bass lesson for you. We're going to be talking about developing a bass line, and today we're using Neil Murray's part from Come and Get It by Whitesnake. If you haven't heard any of these early Whitesnake records with Neil playing bass, you should definitely check them out because they are ace. Alright, so we're kind of in the key of D major for this tune. So the very least you should know is the D major scale in 1 octave. Now I say kind of D major because the chord sequence actually implies more of a D mixolydian tonality. That might be totally over your head, you might not have heard these terms before. Basically we can think of a G major key signature, which means there's an F sharp, all the other notes are just the white notes, so there's an F sharp in it, and a good exercise for you to do would just be to noodle around the bass playing all the white notes except F is going to be sharp. So all we're doing is we're just playing around, just experimenting with the different sounds that we're going to get and the different places our fingers are going to end up in. There's no point in going any further than fret number 7 at this point because we don't use it in the song. And the more you do that, the more your ears and your fingers and your eyes get used to all the notes that you're going to be playing in the tune. We can boil this bass line down to 2 main aspects. They are the rhythm and the harmony. We're going to talk about harmony first, and that's basically what the chords are doing. In the chorus, we get a D major, a C, and G over B. At the very end, we've got an A chord as well coming in. So let's have a listen to how the bass line would be just thinking about the root notes. So D, C, B, and then an A at the end. Starting on D, then C and B, repeat. And again, then your A at the end, so there we have a totally functional bass line. It's not dead exciting, but it will get you through the song. The next thing to do is start adding some rhythm, and for that we're going to listen to what the other instruments are doing. So there, we haven't added any new notes, we're just listening to the other instruments, the keyboards, the drums, the guitar, and following the different pushes and the different feels that they're giving us. The next thing for us to do is to just decorate our bass line a little bit. So we're going to take each individual chord. We start with our chord of D. Now you can think of our chord as the root, third, and fifth. The first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. If you play them all together, that is your chord of D. So our bass line is going to start with the root note, the D, and then we're going to jump to the third, the F sharp. But to make it sound a little cooler, instead of going to this F sharp, this high note, we're going to drop it down the octave and go to a low F sharp. Then if we take our C chord, we're just going to play the root note. It's only a short time on this C chord, so we'll move straight on to the G over B. We're going to play our B note first to establish the chord, and then drop down to our G. Already it's starting to sound much more like a bass line. Let's add a bit more. On that first D chord, we've gone from the root to the third. Next we're going to add the fifth, the A, and back to the root again. The next little passage is a way of getting to the C chord. So our C note is the target. We're going to use the scale to run up to it. We're going to start on an A, the open A string, and run up just the scale one note at a time until we get there, A, B, C. Notice that that C is still on the same place in the bar, the same beat where it would have been earlier on. Once we get to our C chord, we're going to do another arpeggio, root third, fifth, this time ascending, getting higher. Next, our next chord, G over B, so we've got our B root note. And to get from the B to the G, we're just going to, again, pass through the scale. So B down to A, down to G. Remember, it's all white notes apart from the Fs, which are sharp. That's for our first time through the chord sequence. Next time, there's a bit of a variation. Our D chord. If you listen to the keyboard part, you can hear a sus4 sound, which is the D chord, but with the fourth in there as well. The G note. So we follow that keyboard part, going to the fourth, and it's going up, down to the third, back to the root, so just varying it. Instead of going down like we did on the first one, we're going up the second time. Same run to the C, but this time, again, instead of going up, we're going down. Once we get to our G, obviously there's a G chord, we've got our G note, we need to get back to D. This time we're not using the arpeggio, we're not using the scale, we're using a chromatic approach, which means basically just playing one fret at a time, working your way towards the note you want. We want a D, so we're going to start fret number 2, a B note, and just move one fret at a time chromatically until you hit that D. When we get to the D again, that's the end of our second time through. We're on to the third one, it goes back to the same as the first time. And we're finishing off with our A chord, following the pushes from all the other instruments, but starting off with that eighth note pumping kind of feel. And that's the whole chorus. Okay, so just a short one for you today. Try and use those ideas we've been talking about in your own bass lines, so you're not just glued to playing eighth notes and root notes all the way through. Think about the scales, think about the chords, connecting the chord tones, those chromatic approaches, loads of stuff you can take from that one short bass line. You can also use these ideas when learning other people's bass lines. If you understand the theory where the notes are coming from, it makes it easier to work out because you already know what notes they're going to be going to, and it also makes them easier to remember because you're not trying to remember loads of different fret numbers, note names, all that kind of stuff. You just know the music, which is miles easier. Alright, that's your lot for today. I'll see you next time.